Congratulations on announcing that great global partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, we now continue our conversation around Africa's AI path. Now, to navigate this path forward, sometimes it's important to also reflect on the lessons of the past. In 2023, Econet's Steve Masiyiwa and Google's James Manyika engaged in a groundbreaking conversation on Africa's role in the AI revolution. Please welcome them back to the stage to discuss what has changed and what lies ahead. Dr. James Manyika, Senior Vice President at Google, and Mr. Steve Masiyiwa, Founder and Executive Chairman of Econet Global and Cassava Technologies. Please give them a round of applause.
Well, thank you all for being here for this session. You get to see Strive and I reprise something that we did 2 years ago. You all know who Strive is. He doesn't need an introduction. One of the most innovative and entrepreneurial pioneers we've had from Africa do extraordinary things. But, you know, Strive, 2 years ago, you and I did this podcast where we talked about the future of AI for Africa. And we explored a bunch of things. And I remember at the time, two things I think were core to our conversation. One was the idea that there needed to be an extraordinary amount of investment in Africa, both in terms of infrastructure and just investment generally, to realize the opportunity. It was kind of one thing we spent time on. The other thing we spent time on was the fact that we wanted Africa not only to use AI as users, but also to be innovators and pioneers in actually advancing and participating in the AI revolution. Well, that was 2 years ago. A lot of time has passed. I think in AI ages, these are like dog years. 2 years ago feels like a very long time. But what has happened since? Let's kind of update our conversation from last time.
Well, thanks, James, and good evening, everybody. It's great to be back. And you know, it's such an honor to be with James because I'm always in awe of what James does. You know, he is one of the most important people in AI, and he is an African. And you know, we really just need to stop and acknowledge that he's one of the most senior people in the Google organization.
No. Thank you.
And you know, and James does amazing things, not only as a scientist himself, but also as a leader in this industry and really also on the frontiers of the ethical challenges that also come with this extraordinary new technology. I think in a couple of weeks, you and I are going to be at the Vatican.
Oh, that's true.
You know, at a meeting organized at the Vatican to discuss the ethics and safety issues around AI, which we've done before. It's been an extraordinary 2 years, James. I mean, this industry is moving at a pace I have never seen any industry go before, both in the United States where we are and globally. I've never seen innovation that moves at this pace. I don't think anyone has in global history. I've not seen an industry add so much value, at least at the capital markets. It's great to have stock in some of these companies because we're seeing some amazing things. But in Africa, we haven't sat on our hands. We are also deeply engaged in debates around governance, around policy, and as entrepreneurs, we are beginning to stir and get moving, both in the bigger organizations like mine, but as well as, most importantly, in my view, young entrepreneurs.
Yep.
They are young, and with the advent of AI being available for small businesses to use right now, you shouldn't be really in this room and you are running a business or an organization, even for not-for-profit, and you are not using AI. Step out for 5 minutes, go download Gemini. That's the Google version, so I'm not allowed to speak about the others since I'm with James. But they're all extraordinary models, extraordinary. Go out and it takes 5 minutes, go download it and ask, who's James Masiyiwa? And it's going to tell you a lot more than I can tell you. So the reality is we are moving, and we're beginning to mobilize capital. Yes, it's modest by global standards, but for what we need, we are moving, James.
Yeah, no, and I'll just to add to that, I mean, you've been doing extraordinary work with the idea of AI factories in Africa and investments. I mean, part of what, if you remember what we talked about last time, we talked about the importance of infrastructure. That's one area, for example, where we've been making big investments in undersea cables and connectivity, but also in creating this idea of a distributed cloud that many people can access. But I think one of the things that I think is so important is to make sure that young people have access, students, learners, innovators, entrepreneurs, and so forth. I mean, one of the things that we announced recently, by the way, is that we're giving free access to students over the age of 18, and we're doing that in 8 countries. We're starting with 8 countries, and those are 8 countries that make up a little over 500 million Africans, so they can start to have free access. And also, I think the idea of investing in entrepreneurs, startup ecosystems, and also having some of those innovations happen on the African continent. I mean, I'm particularly proud, for example, of, we have an extraordinary pioneering research team in Ghana and also in Kenya that's doing really extraordinary kind of world, frontier AI work that's leading to the work we're doing in languages, in weather forecasting, and all of that's being led by the African team. But, these are some of the things that have been happening since. But I think one of the things that's made a big difference is expanding access to models of very different kinds, different sizes. We now also have open models. We also have smaller models, more efficient models, so that people can actually take advantage of these from wherever they are.
No, I mean, look, James, again, I know you're modest, but let's be, for the audience, AI as we know it in its current iteration, the pioneering work of what we now see as ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, whatever it is we are seeing, really comes from Google. You guys were where the work was done. And you remain at the forefront of this work, and you must be seeing extraordinary things yourself on a day-to-day basis, some of which no doubt you can't share. But, let us know, let us in on some of the things that you can share, James. James and I, although we are here, talking in public, we have these kind of conversations all the time. I went to see James about 2 weeks ago, and we had a long walk in which I was kind of prodding him and saying, come on, James, tell me what's happening.
Well, I think some of the exciting frontiers that are, from a research standpoint, first of all, as you know, the models are becoming very, very capable. You now have these deep research thinking models and other capabilities that you can actually now do with these models. They've also become extraordinarily multimodal. Yeah. So it's no longer just about text. Yeah. And so it's now about coding. It's now about images. I mean, hopefully some of you are playing with Nano Banana and having fun with that. So there's a whole bunch of native multimodality that's now possible. And the idea that you can now build what are called agentic systems that enable you to do so many more things, I think those are some of the exciting frontiers. But I think it's also important to think about what's happening at the intersection of AI and other things. So you're seeing Gemini robotics or AI and robotics, what you can now do with these so-called vision language action models, which is quite extraordinary. So you're starting to see that. you're seeing AI sort of advance science. As you know, my colleagues got a Nobel Prize last year for some of the breakthrough work in biology. But even some of this pioneering work, by the way, I'll go back to Africa. You know, one of the things that people don't realize is there's actually a lot of pioneering work being done on the continent. So our team in Ghana, for example, is working on plant phenotyping for food security. How do you use AI models to actually understand, plant, phenotypes to be able to help address some of the issues in agriculture. So you're going to see a lot of that. But I think one of the things that should matter for entrepreneurs is the fact that you now have a variety of models, from the big ones to the small ones to the cheap and efficient ones on the so-called Pareto frontier. That's exciting. I know you're taking advantage of that in some of your innovations. You should talk about that too, by the way.
Yes, I am.
So you should talk about some of the innovations you're doing, but also the importance of this technology in adjacent fields like cybersecurity and security, and the need for kind of resilience for whether it's governments or other departments. You're quite involved in that.
Yes, we are. We are. And of course, at a business level, we are great partners with Google, and we're doing a lot of stuff together. We recently announced together the introduction of distributed cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, this, for those who are familiar with cloud-based platforms, what was announced by Thomas Kurian, the head of Google Cloud, and we were so proud that he said that our company was the African partner, is what is going to enable governments, for instance, to really reorganize and empower education, healthcare, agriculture. One of the projects we've been working on with the help of your team is a platform which we'll be launching across Africa, which help farmers, particularly smallholder farmers. They can, with a smartphone, just walk into a field now, take a picture, and in a few seconds, a picture of a leaf on a maize field. And if there are any insects or anything on that, or if there's moisture, deficiency, or even a pestilence, it will tell them in a matter of seconds what the problem is. And it will even inform government that you have a pestilence in this area that you need to deal with. Those tools we are launching right now.
Right.
And so this isn't just some kind of high science. As entrepreneurs, our job is to know I don't need to know all the deep stuff, but I need to know enough to be able to guide my own teams to say, there's a product here. Let's take this to the people. There's education. For instance, one of my favorite platforms is guided learning, which is on Google Gemini. So if you download that Google AI platform, Gemini, on the toolbar, you have something called guided learning. Do you know that tonight, with guided learning, you can tell it what you know about physics and then ask it to teach you about Newton's laws of gravity in your mother language? And it can do it.
Right.
It can give you a tutorial on it. Imagine what we are going to do with that. It means we can empower teachers. You don't have to be the best teacher in the world. You could have 6 months of training behind your teaching. But you can now go out there and teach like you're in the best private school, most expensive private school, but yet you are in a village in Zimbabwe.
Oh, absolutely.
Why not?
One of the things, the potential for this technology to help address so many societal challenges and opportunities, particularly in Africa, I think is extraordinary. By the way, even though we're doing quite a lot, there's so much more to do. There's so much more still to do. So, for example, even though in our case, one of the things we've focused on is languages, for example. And I think, last year we added another 110 languages to Google Translate, and I think something like 30 of those were African languages.
Yeah.
There's still a lot more.
Yeah.
So, for example, we're making investments to actually see if we can add more African languages. That's an area we continue to invest in. I think that what's often missing are the data sets and the understanding of local cultures and understanding. So that's work we're actually doing together with local partners in different countries across Africa. The other thing that's also important is to make these tools available for African entrepreneurs and farmers and also governments to take advantage of them. So, for example, one of the real challenges are floods and flood forecasting. So, for example, even though we now cover about over 100 countries with our AI-enabled flood forecasting systems, 40 of those are African countries. We'd like to add a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think, even as excited as you and I get about these things, there's still so much more to do. I don't think we've done enough, for example, to give access to all the entrepreneurs, empower all the schools, universities, build more capacity for both research and entrepreneurship on the African continent. That's work for us to do, but quite frankly, for others, even including in this room, to join us and partner on.
And I know we have, for example, policymakers here.
Right.
So, one of the things I learned in spending time with some of the Google guys, I went to your colleagues at DeepMind, and there's someone there said something to me which really stuck with me, which was, when you think about how you want to use AI, what is it that you have the highest need of? And I thought that was quite profound. So he said, for example, they were looking at a hospital in Africa. And somebody said, they asked the hospital administration, where is your greatest need? You'd have thought they would have said doctors. They said, no, nurses. So they went to do a study at the workflows of nurses. And they found that 40 to 50% of a nurse's work in a hospital in Africa is not nursing. It's administration. Reports, preparing reports for the doctors. And they said, okay, so why don't we use AI to take out the repetitive tasks and allow the nurse to be the nurse? The AI cannot become a nurse. It's impossible. Because nursing is empathy. It's got so much more to healing through a nurse than somebody just putting a bandage on you. The AI will never get there. But the AI can take out the reporting. The AI can take out the admin tasks and so relieve the nurse to be more of the nurse. So we can amplify. So we began even to look at the work of doctors, not just the simple African doctor's surgery. Right. And we say, so what do you do? How can we reduce your workflow in such a way that you can see more people? It takes 7 years to train a doctor, but the AI can come in and be an assistant in dealing with those repetitive tasks. These are the practical space. So really moving forward for us now in AI is to move to the practical phase.
But I also want to come back to something. One of the things, you and I, have the privilege of being able to partner and work together on a whole bunch of these things. Yeah. But I think it's going to take more than just us. Yes. I think it's going to take a lot more about that. What's your view, for example, what whether it's governments or policymakers and others should do to enable Africa and Africans to take advantage of this? I'm struck in particular, as we've discussed before, about how, often we make it very difficult for entrepreneurs and innovators to work across the entire continent. I know you and I have been kind of advocating for this idea of, the African Free Trade Agreement, and also to kind of make it easy to be able to operate across the continent. Are there other things you would say, we should tackle these other things if, in fact, Africa and Africans are going to be able to take advantage of these possibilities?
Well, let's say, for example, you're a policymaker, and we have a lot of policymakers, ministers, some in the room, and when I was speaking earlier, we had the president of Botswana was here. And this will be the takeaway. Don't start regulating something you don't understand. Don't rush to regulate, rush to understand it. That's the first thing, rush to understand it, okay? This is not rocket science. He's a rocket scientist, but this is not rocket science for most of us, for the things that we need to do, okay? Spend some time every evening and just go there on YouTube and learn to prompt and play and so forth with this thing. You'll be amazed how far you will be. But really, at a practical level, encourage people to adopt, to use, to begin to look at how they apply. And then let us move quickly to start training our young people, skilling and certifying them. There is so much material out there to help train that you're not having to pay for. Certification maybe, but we need as many of our millions of our young people, encourage them, speak to them, say, come on, go and adopt and train yourself in AI, okay? Education is so important to get to this. Then we need to encourage our entrepreneurs to come up with solutions for the problems that we face. Their opportunities come from addressing the problems that we face.
So let me press you on that one, Strive. So, you've been a huge inspiration to a whole generation of entrepreneurs and innovators on the continent.
Yeah.
If you were starting over now as an entrepreneur in this AI moment, what would you be doing? What advice would you have for entrepreneurs right now, given everything you know about AI and the possibilities?
I'd be vibe coding.
You'd be vibe coding?
I've tried it, James. Right. I hadn't been coding for many years, but it's pretty cool. It's amazing. But that's probably me being a bit geeky for some people. But look, I would be out there trying to build my own application. I'd certainly be a developer, trying to develop something. The ability to scale with AI, the ability to, you talk about capital. And I hear you talking about capital. But an AI business today, you'll do it at 1/10 of the capital requirements of a normal business. An AI business can scale. You can take it across borders at a pace I couldn't have imagined 30 years ago. So it is the guys with the AI businesses. Let me tell you, 10 years from now, sitting here, you can call me a prophet, the wealthiest Africans 10 years from now will not be the Dangotes and the Masiyiwas of this world. It will be young people who are sitting right now in their bedrooms and in their workshops building AI applications for agriculture, for health sector, for food security. That is what is happening. And ours is only to encourage, to inspire them, and to tell them that they can do it and they're unstoppable.
What else do they need? You spend a fair bit of time talking to entrepreneurs. Maybe you and I, it's worth comparing notes. When I've spoken to African entrepreneurs, often I hear things like they'd like to have access to infrastructure and compute and connectivity. So hopefully some of the things we're doing, the investments we're making will help with that. I often hear also the need for cheap access to models that they can use, and they complain to me about the cost of tokens and how much that costs and so forth. And I think we're trying to do that with smaller models and the flash models and those kinds of things. But I'm just curious, what do you hear when you speak to entrepreneurs in this moment about what they think they need to be able to enable them to do what they're trying to do.
To be honest, when I was here earlier, James, talking about our AI factory, I barely couldn't get out of the room. And some of the young people already pushing cards in front of me were telling me, hey, I'm working on AI languages. Somebody was talking to me about building an AI language of his mother language.
Right.
Okay? There are young people already working on Swahili, on Zulu, and Yoruba, and so forth. That is so important. Training models to understand our languages. There's still a lot more work to be done in there. So these are some of the things that I would be encouraging them to do more. A lot of our own African information is not in digital format.
Right.
You know, that's why you can't find it when you go online. So let's not complain about bias. We can correct that. So we need to go out there, and those actually become opportunities to label, to bring all that data into a format that we can use. So there's some really basic things that young people can begin to do. But let me assure you, they're ahead of us, not behind us. Like Oswald was saying earlier on, we run into Jonathan Ross of Grok, whom you know very well. And Jonathan Ross told me a statistic. He said, on Grok, they have 28,000 at that time, which is about a year ago, 28,000 developers in Europe. And then he says, so how many do you think I have in Africa?
More than that.
He said 20,000, and they're growing faster than Europe.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the things that I actually find extraordinary is that the rate of growth of developers who are accessing these tools, and get this, first of all, it's growing fastest, but also many of them are women, actually.
Yes.
At least compared to other places, which is also quite exciting. And I think it's actually quite important to see that many of them are also focusing on areas that not only matter for Africa, like agriculture and health and financial services and so forth, but also doing innovations that actually will matter for the world. So one of the things, for example, when I see some of the work that our Africa-based teams are doing, these are not just innovations for Africa. Sure, they'll benefit Africa, but these matter globally. So for example, we're doing this work on using AI models to understand what are called open buildings data sets. Now, a lot of that work is obviously very important for Africa, but it's actually work that's now becoming important for the world.
Yeah,
and that work is actually being led out of Africa, which is quite extraordinary. But I know we're being told that we're running out of time, so we probably should, you and I could go on forever. But here's a question maybe for both of us to reflect on. If we're invited again, we'll see if the DSG invites us again to GABI next year, but if we're invited again 2 years from now, and we're having these conversations, what should we be talking about? What will have happened? What should we be talking about 2 years from now?
Ooh, you know what I'd love to hear 2 years from now? Is how much impact AI is beginning to have in basic things like productivity in Africa, how it's infusing its way into African businesses. Because there is no organization that cannot infuse AI now.
Right.
Okay? So we won't even be talking at this introductory level. We'll be talking to people who are either empowering existing businesses with AI, governments that are transforming education, lowering costs, helping citizens access services. Like, you shouldn't have to line up at a passport office. Repetitive stuff like that, finding your birth certificate or land records. This kind of stuff we should clean up in the next 2 years. People have better things to do, okay? So we will start hearing real case studies of what people are doing, and we'll begin to hear really about African unicorns. Yeah. Businesses that are beginning to sprint out of countries. Investors are beginning to take an interest in Africa. We should hear We should be seeing venture capitalists wandering around our corridors because they've heard of opportunities in Africa. Why not? Why not? So that's my vision for the next 2 years.
Let me add a few more things. I think first I would hope that we'll have made significant progress on these basic infrastructure capabilities and capacities, that we won't be talking as much as we are now about connectivity and compute and access to cloud infrastructure to enable entrepreneurs. I think hopefully we'll be past that. I also hope that we will have found a way to have many, many, many more entrepreneurs. I mean, we've invested in startups and ecosystem, but I hope there'll be more capital inflows into Africa, enabling entrepreneurs, and maybe actually strive. You and I won't be on the stage, but there'll be like 5 unicorns on the stage.
Yeah.
And not
you know what we
I.
mean by unicorns, right? For those older, older Africans, younger than me, or older than me. I'm only 64, but I'm very young. For those guys, unicorn is a company valued at $1 billion. Okay? We've only got about 2,000 of them. We need more.
Hopefully they'll be lined up on stage. But I also hope we'll have made significant progress on these issues of data sets and languages, because that's a big part of what's going to enable this technology to reflect African cultures, African entrepreneurs. And I just hope that we'll have many, many more people building. As you and I have discussed many, many times over, it's one thing to have Africans using this technology. We also need Africans building and innovating and leading the innovations, tackling issues that matter for Africa and indeed for the world. So I hope we'll be talking about progress on all those fronts.
And I can't leave, James, without reiterating a report I was listening to on Al Jazeera about 2 weeks ago. The Ministry of Education of China has just issued guidelines, instructions to its entire education system. AI education is mandatory from the age of 6. Okay? Minister, if you are listening to me, go get it, get AI to translate it, and issue the same guidelines, please. We'll sort out other problems later, okay? Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.